You remember saving up for it, the name that meant you'd arrived. Now it's on the clearance rack, in administration, or a hollow logo on licensed goods. Burberry, the house that invented the trench, just swung to a loss. Revenue down 17%, 1,700 jobs gone. 7 luxury brands nobody's buying anymore. 5 still worth every penny. Here's the quiet tragedy of menswear. The names you grew up coveting, the ones you finally bought when the promotion came through, are not what they were. Some are gone. Some are losing money by the hundreds of millions. Some are just a logo now, a famous word printed on something a contract factory made to a price. And the cruel part is the price tag often did not move. You are still asked to pay for the legacy, long after the legacy left the building. But real luxury never disappeared. It just stopped shouting. It pulled back to the houses that still own their mills and still stitch by hand, while the famous names cashed in their reputations. The cachet moved. It left the logos and went to the workrooms. Most men never noticed, because the workrooms do not advertise. This is a grief you have felt in a fitting room. The suit with the right label that somehow felt wrong in the hand. Let me walk you through the 7 that fell, and then the 5 that quietly still earn it. Number 1, Burberry. Credit where it is owed first. Burberry invented the trench coat in the trenches of the First World War, perfected gabardine, and made that check pattern one of the most recognized in the world. Genuine British luxury, earned over a century. For most of that century, a Burberry trench was the real thing. A coat your father might have kept for 30 years. Now, the numbers. For the fiscal year to March 2025, revenue fell 17% to about £2.5 billion. The company swung to a £66 million pre-tax loss, down from a £383 million profit the year before. In May, it announced it would cut around 1,700 jobs, roughly 20% of its workforce. The new chief executive, Joshua Schulman, is now trying to drag the brand back to its heritage trench. Away from the logo hype it chased and the price hikes, it is now rolling back. This is what overreaching on a logo looks like. They climbed the price ladder, the cachet did not follow, and the customer walked. A $4,000 logo handbag is a bet that the name alone is worth the number. Burberry made that bet and lost it. The trench was always the real asset. The hype was the mistake. The logo is never the legacy. Even the house that invented the trench had to learn it the hard way. One quick thing, and it's the one you've been asking for. You wanted the whole method in one place? Well, here it is. My new guide. Build a $2,000 wardrobe for $200. Every rule from this channel. No logos, no fluff. The link is below. Go build it. Number 2, Ted Baker. Here is the verdict first. This one did not just decline. It died, at least as you knew it, in its prime. Ted Baker was genuinely good. A fun, sharply cut British label that called itself affordable luxury and actually delivered a distinctive house style. Then it expanded itself into oblivion. In 2024, the brand's operators collapsed. The North American arm filed for Chapter 15 bankruptcy in April. Liquidation sales hit all 31 U.S. stores and 9 in Canada, and online shopping shut down that May. The UK and European business went into administration too. What's left trades on as a name through wholesale and licensing deals. But the Ted Baker you remember, the one with its own shops and its own point of view, is finished. The label may still appear on a rack. The brand behind it does not. This is the cautionary tale of growth for growth's sake. It is a particular kind of heartbreak, not a brand that got cheap, but a brand that got greedy for scale and lost the very thing that made it worth scaling. A brand with a real identity chased store counts and square footage until the identity drowned. They didn't sell out, they sold off. And once a label is sold off in pieces, the thing you loved about it rarely survives the transaction. Watch what happens next, because the next one slid the other way. Not bankruptcy, but a slow fade from prestige to the mall rack. Number 3, Hugo Boss. Let me put the then against the now, because that contrast is the whole story. In the 80s and 90s, a Hugo Boss suit meant something. It was the sharp, powerful German-tailored statement of a man on the way up. The cachet was real. Now walk a department store floor. Boss is everywhere. On the racks beside every other premium mall label, and a great many of its suits use fused construction, the chest panel glued rather than stitched. Here is why that matters. A fused jacket bonds the canvas to the cloth with adhesive. Over time, with dry cleaning and wear, that glue can fail. The chest bubbles and ripples, and the jacket is finished. You cannot fix delamination. A full canvas jacket has a floating horsehair and wool chest piece stitched in that molds to you and lasts decades. Boss largely sells you the glued kind at a price the old prestige no longer justifies. The 80s man who saved for a Boss suit was buying a real statement. The man who buys the same label today is mostly buying the memory of it. The name still carries a memory of status. The construction stopped backing it up. The man who knows reads the chest of the jacket, not the label inside the collar. The next one had a real designer once, and a real fall when the moment passed. Number 4. John Varvatos. A little history because the pedigree here was real. John Varvatos came up under Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein, a genuinely talented designer. And in the 2000s, he built a rock and roll luxury moment: leather, lean tailoring, guitars in the ad campaigns. For a stretch, it was the cool end of American designer menswear. Then the moment passed. In May 2020, John Varvatos Enterprises filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, listing well over $140 million in debt. The assets were bought up, and a version of the name carries on under new ownership, but the cultural relevance that made it matter is gone. This is a different kind of fall than bankruptcy from overexpansion. This is a brand built on a vibe, and vibes expire. When the rock and roll luxury moment ended, there was no deep craft heritage underneath to hold the name up. A trend is a rented foundation. When the trend leaves, the building comes down. There is a lesson in that for every brand that mistakes a hot season for a heritage. The next one is the starkest case on this whole list. A famous name with literally no designer behind it at all. Number 5. Perry Ellis. Here is the insider fact most people never stop to consider. Perry Ellis, the man, died in 1986. The designer has been gone for nearly 40 years. What carries his name today is, in plain terms, a licensing operation, a famous American label stamped onto product with no founding designer's hand anywhere near it. Now, licensing is not a crime, and some licensed goods are perfectly serviceable, but understand exactly what you are buying. You are buying a word. The cachet of that word was built by a living designer in the early 80s, a genuinely influential one, and it has been coasting on the memory ever since. There is no atelier. There is no house style enforced by a creative mind who answers for it. There is a name, owned as an asset, licensed out wherever it can still move product. A brand is supposed to be a promise kept by someone. This is a promise with nobody behind it. This is the purest example of the thesis. The logo outlived the legacy by 4 decades. Think about that. The man whose taste built that name has been gone longer than some of the people buying it have been alive. When you see that label, you are not buying Perry Ellis's work. You are buying the right to wear his name long after the man who gave it meaning was gone. The logo is never the legacy. Here it is, the only thing left. The next one sold a different kind of memory, $300 of it, on your back pocket. Number 6. True Religion. So what actually happened to $300 denim? Because if you were a certain age in the mid-2000s, True Religion was status you wore on your back pocket. The thick contrast stitching, the horseshoe, the price that told everyone you'd spent it. For a few years, it defined premium denim. Then the whole proposition collapsed. The look fell out of fashion. The cachet evaporated, and in 2020, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. What survives now lives largely in malls and outlet centers. The same logo, far from the status symbol it once was. Here is the lesson buried in those jeans. The product was never really worth $300 in construction terms. It was worth $300 in hype, and hype is the most perishable thing money can buy. The denim itself, the ounce weight, the stitching, did not justify the number once the trend died. A pair of well-made selvage jeans from an honest maker. 14 ounces of denim woven on an old shuttle loom will outlast and outconstruct peak True Religion for less. The irony is brutal. The jeans your grandfather wore to work were better made than the ones a generation paid $300 to show off. The man who reads the denim, not the back pocket logo, never paid the hype tax in the first place. One more fall, and it's the one this audience mourns most. Number 7. Brooks Brothers. Handle this one gently because it is the deepest heritage on the list. Founded in 1818, Brooks Brothers is the oldest continuously operating clothing brand in America. It invented the ready-to-wear suit in this country. It popularized the button-down collar. It dressed presidents, Lincoln, Roosevelt, Kennedy. For generations, it was the quiet backbone of the American wardrobe. And in July 2020, it filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was bought out of bankruptcy, and today it sits under Catalyst Brands, the group formed in 2025 from the merger of Spark and JCPenney's operations. The name survives. The question is, what's inside it? The heritage price is still on the tag, but the product no longer reliably carries the make that built the name. This is the saddest kind of fall, not a flameout, but a slow financialization, a great house passed between owners and squeezed for what the name can still earn. This is the one in the comments every week. The men who remember a Brooks Brothers suit that lasted 20 years asking what happened. This is what happened. Some pieces remain decent. The black fleece line and certain made in USA pieces still carry real make, but you can no longer assume the Brooks Brothers label means the Brooks Brothers craft. You have to check garment by garment, which is something you never used to have to do. And that, for a 200-year-old name, is the real loss. The logo is never the legacy. So that's the autopsy. 7 names sold off, licensed out, financialized, or faded, still charging for a legacy the craft no longer backs. It's enough to make you cynical about the whole category. Don't be, because here's the pivot. Real luxury never went anywhere. The houses that never chased the logo are still out there, still owning their mills, still stitching by hand. You just have to know their names. Here are 5. First, Ermenegildo Zegna. The insider's definition of real luxury is traceability, and almost nobody can match Zegna on it. This is a fully vertically integrated house. It owns its own wool mills, Lanificio Zegna, and others like Bonotto and Pettinatura di Verone, and controls the cloth from raw fiber through spinning and weaving to the finished suit. Read that again. They own the sheep-to-suit chain. When you buy Zegna, you're not paying a logo to slap its name on someone else's fabric. You're buying cloth the house made itself to its own standard, every step inside its own walls. Zegna also grades its cloth in super numbers, Super 120S, 150S, and finer, a measure of how thin and fine the wool fiber is spun. Higher numbers mean a finer, softer, more luxurious cloth, and Zegna spins some of the finest wool on earth in its own mills. Expect a suit to run several $1,000s and understand what that money buys. The mill, not the marketing. This is luxury you can trace end to end, which is exactly what the fallen brands can no longer offer. The man who knows asks one question: who made the cloth? Zegna's answer is the rarest one in the business: we did. The next one answers a different question: how many human hours can go into a single jacket? Second, Brioni. Here is the spec that ends the argument. A fully hand-tailored Brioni suit takes master tailors on the order of 20 to 30 hours of hand stitching to build in its made-in-Italy ateliers. Hours by hand. This is the house that famously tailored James Bond, and it represents the Neapolitan-influenced pinnacle of what made means. Every critical part of the jacket that can be done by hand is the canvas hand-padded, the lapels rolled by hand, the whole garment shaped to live on a human body rather than a factory rack. That is why a Brioni suit costs what a small car costs, and that is also why it is worth it to the man who understands what he's holding. You are not paying for a name. You are paying for human hours and human skill, the most expensive and most honest thing in clothing. Brioni even runs its own tailoring school, the Scuola di Alta Sartoria, to train the next generation of master tailors, because the skill is rare enough that it has to be deliberately kept alive. That is a brand investing in the craft itself, not the logo. This is the opposite of a glued chest panel. This is the apex of craft, and the price simply reflects the labor inside it. The next one brings that same Italian craft down to a price a normal man can actually reach. Third, Canali. Let me set this directly against the fallen logos, because Canali is the value sweet spot of real Italian tailoring. It's a family-owned house, still run by the family, not a holding company squeezing it for quarterly margin. It builds genuine full-canvas suits in Italy, with that floating, stitched-in chest piece that molds to you and lasts. And the entry price for a full-canvas Canali runs roughly $2,000 to $2,400. Now compare. A fallen logo will charge you near that for a fused, glued jacket riding on a fading name. Canali gives you the real construction, family-owned and Italian-made, for less logo tax. More suit, less name. For the man stepping up to his first properly made suit, it's the smartest money on this list. The next one proves real luxury can have a conscience too. You get the craft that the mega logos abandoned, at a price that doesn't punish you for the privilege. Canali has made suits in Italy since 1934 in its own factories with its own people. Pick one up against a fallen logo at the same price. One has the floating, hand-shaped chest that breathes and lasts. The other has glue. Canali barely sells you a logo at all. Fourth, Brunello Cucinelli. The verdict here is that the quality and the ethics are both real, which is rarer than it sounds. Out of Solomeo, a restored medieval village in Umbria, Cucinelli built a house on genuinely graded cashmere and a philosophy he calls humanistic capitalism, using the profits of a luxury business to pay generous wages. Restore the village and treat the people who make the goods with dignity. It is the textbook case of quiet luxury done with substance behind it. The cashmere is the real fine-grade article, and the prices, low four figures for a knit, more for tailoring, reflect material and labor, not a logo. What you do not get is a shout, no giant emblem. Cucinelli's cashmere comes largely from the finest Mongolian and Himalayan goats, the long, fine fibers that make a sweater feel like warm water and last 20 years instead of pilling in one. The man who knows recognizes Cucinelli by the hand of the cashmere, not by a badge across the chest. That's the point. The fallen brand sold the badge and lost the substance. Cucinelli kept the substance and never needed the badge. And the last one is the best-kept secret of all, the suit other suit makers quietly admire. Fifth, Oxford. And here is the hidden gem the logo crowd never learned, the one you keep asking me about. Oxford Clothes, made in Chicago, is among the most hand-built, ready-to-wear tailoring in America. The numbers are almost hard to believe. A jacket goes through well over 160 separate steps. The canvases, collars, and lapels are hand-padded. The pressing alone runs to dozens of operations, the final hand pressing taking over an hour by itself. This is dozens of hours of artisan handwork in a single garment, made in the United States with prices that run from roughly $4,000 up. No flashy logo, no global ad campaign, just some of the finest handwork in any suit made in this country, known mostly to the men who study these things. Oxford has dressed presidents and titans of industry for over a century, quietly, while the louder names took the magazine covers. It is the tailor's tailor, the suit other suit makers respect. This is the reward for learning to read the craft instead of the cachet. While the logo crowd was overpaying for fused jackets with famous names, the quiet connoisseur was buying Oxford and outdressing all of them. The logo is never the legacy. Oxford is all legacy and almost no logo. So there's your map. Notice the difference between the two halves of this list. The Fallen 7 sold the name and let the make rot. The Worth It 5 kept the make and let the name stay quiet. That is the whole game. Read the canvas, not the logo. Read the make, the mill, the hours of handwork. The famous name on the label never once told you whether the craft was still inside, and on 7 of these, it isn't anymore. On 5, it never left. The good news is simple. Once you can read a chest panel and a mill, the logo loses its power over your wallet, and you start dressing better than the men who still pay for the name. I'm Bill. I buy the craft, not the cachet. And the guide so many of you asked for is finally here. Build a $2,000 wardrobe for $200. Every rule from this channel in one place, linked below. If this one hit home, watch the one on the suit brands to never buy. The full breakdown of fused junk sold at canvas prices, sitting at 322,000 views. Then watch the luxury shoe brands to never buy, 160,000 views, where we did this same autopsy on footwear. Subscribe. This channel reads the craft, not the cachet.